Americans love a good just-in-case fantasy. Power grid collapses, alien invasion, surprise fondue crisis. We shop like all three are happening on Tuesday. In this video, we are unpacking 49 ridiculous, overprepared, wildly unnecessary things people bought and then never actually used. 1. Let's talk about that high-tech countertop herb garden you bought. You saw the infomercial and convinced yourself you were just 2 basil leaves away from being a master chef. It sat on your counter, glowing with that blinding purple LED light that screams, "I have disposable income and 0 agricultural skills." For 3 days, you felt like a sustainable farmer. But then, life happened. You missed 1 watering cycle, and the cilantro drowned in a fit of overcompensation while the mint turned into crispy brown twigs. Now it's just a humid plastic coffin for dead plants taking up valuable space where the pizza boxes belong. Honestly, driving to the store for a packet of rosemary is significantly less work than mourning a vegetable you murdered. 2. The portable, inflatable hot tub. It sounded like a stroke of genius at 2 a.m. on Amazon, a luxurious spa in the backyard for a fraction of the cost. But nobody talks about the labor. You spent 4 hours inflating it with a pump that sounds like a dying jet engine, another 6 hours filling it with the garden hose, and 3 days waiting for the water to reach a temperature above hypothermia. You used it exactly 1 time. Now it sits on the patio, a lukewarm petri dish breeding mosquitoes and regret. Deflating it is too much work, so it just stays there, slowly collapsing like your dreams of affordable luxury living. 3. Someone actually purchased a full replica medieval knight's helmet specifically to protect their brain from solar flares. I wish I was making this up. The logic here is that when the sun finally decides to melt our power grid, the only people safe from the cosmic radiation will be those with 16 pounds of conductive steel strapped to their heads. If the apocalypse happens, this guy is going to be the best-dressed roasted vegetable in the neighborhood. Since the world hasn't ended yet, the helmet has been demoted. It's currently sitting on a floor lamp in the living room, looking like a decapitated sentry that scares the dog every time he walks by. Money well spent on anxiety, folks. 4. The novelty panic button that screams or blasts a siren when you slam it. It seemed like the pinnacle of office comedy when you saw it in the catalog. You taped it under your desk, ready to unleash chaos during a dull moment. But here is the thing about novelty electronics. They have no chill. You forgot it was there until you shifted your leg during a very serious Zoom meeting with your insurance agent. Suddenly, your home office sounded like a prison break, and you were left trying to explain that you aren't actually under attack. You're just an immature adult with bad impulse control. It hasn't been funny since 2008, but the adhesive is too strong to remove it without taking a chunk of the desk with it. 5. We need to have a serious conversation about the 12 reusable grocery bags rotting in the trunk of your car. You bought them in a heroic bid for eco-redemption, planning to be that organized, planet-saving citizen. Instead, you have created a fabric nesting doll situation where bags live inside other bags in a dark, forgotten corner of your vehicle. You only realize they exist when you are already standing at the checkout line, 500 feet away from the car, staring at the cashier as you shamefully ask for plastic. You have enough tote bags to move an entire apartment, yet you have used them exactly 0 times for actual groceries. They are just passengers now, along for the ride. 6. A literal lifetime supply of glitter, amassed during a manic crafting phase where you thought you were going to open an online shop. You bought the industrial-sized tub, anticipating a future where everything you own needed to sparkle aggressively. The craft bug left after a week. The glitter, however, is eternal. It defies the laws of physics. It has been 5 years, and you are still finding specks of it on your forehead, in the carpet, and somehow inside the refrigerator. You don't own glitter, glitter owns you. If archaeologists dig up your house in 1,000 years, they will assume you worshipped a disco ball deity because the stuff is absolutely indestructible. 7. You bought a self-aware to-do list pad that hurls insults at you to boost productivity. The headers say things like, "Do it, you coward," or "Stop being a potato." At the time, you thought this aggressive approach was the kick in the pants you needed. It was funny for the first 2 pages. But after ignoring it for a week, having a piece of paper call you soft bread just feels like bullying. Now it lives under the couch because you can't handle the judgment of stationery. It is probably down there plotting with the dust bunnies, waiting for the moment you finally try to clean so it can mock your lack of follow-through one last time. 8. That emergency sewing kit the size of a matchbox. You know the one. It has 4 inches of thread that snaps if you look at it wrong, and a needle so small you need an electron microscope to thread it. You bought it thinking, I will be prepared for any wardrobe malfunction. The reality? You tried to fix a button once, stabbed your thumb 3 times, cursed the entire textile industry, and just used a safety pin or a stapler. Now it lives in your glove compartment or junk drawer, a tiny plastic placebo that makes you feel responsible even though you lack the fine motor skills and the patience to actually use it. 9. You bought that alien-looking ergonomic keyboard because a tech blog convinced you that you were one wrist twinge away from medical disaster. It sat on your desk looking less like a computer peripheral and more like a tectonic plate that had recently snapped in half. You swore this was the new you. But after 3 days of typing like a toddler wearing oven mitts and hitting the letter Q when you meant to hit P, you realize that comfort is overrated compared to actually getting work done. You quietly unplugged it and brought back the dirty, crumb-filled standard keyboard you've used for a decade. The ergonomic marvel now gathers dust on a shelf, a plastic monument to a version of you that had better posture and way more patience. 10. The solar-powered flashlight. A brilliant concept on paper, absolutely terrible in practice. You bought it for the big one, anticipating a power grid failure that would somehow only happen during a bright, sunny afternoon. But here is the flaw in your survival strategy. You store flashlights in dark drawers, basements, or emergency kits, places famously devoid of the sun. When the lights actually go out at night, you are holding a dead plastic tube that needs 4 hours of direct noon sunlight to function for 10 minutes. You end up standing in the pitch black, aggressively shaking it or clicking the button, praying for a single photon, while realizing that maybe, just maybe, batteries weren't the enemy after all. 11. Enter the tactical spork. Because nothing says you are ready for societal collapse like a utensil that does 3 jobs poorly instead of 1 job well. It features a spoon that spills soup, a fork that can't stab a potato, and a serrated edge on the side that is guaranteed to slice the corner of your mouth open like the Joker. You bought it thinking you might need to eat a can of beans while simultaneously fighting off a bear. In reality, the only thing this titanium-coated monstrosity has ever fought is the lint at the bottom of your camping bag. It turns a simple meal into a dental hazard, but hey, at least you look intense while struggling to eat your yogurt. 12. A motion-activated applause machine installed in the hallway. You bought it for a cheap ego boost, thinking a round of applause every time you walked to the fridge would improve household morale. It was funny for exactly 45 minutes. Then the novelty wore off, and the terror set in. The cat figured out how to trigger it at 3 a.m., so you would wake up to the sound of a standing ovation in an empty house, convinced a ghost was congratulating you for sleeping. It was eventually ripped off the wall and thrown into the garage, where it now sarcastically claps for the lawnmower and the spiders whenever the wind blows. 13. The emergency fondue kit. Because when the zombies come and the economy collapses, you are definitely going to want to melt cheese with high precision. This wasn't a drunk purchase. This was a preparedness decision. It comes with tiny forks and a pot heated by a single, struggling tea light. You genuinely imagined a scenario where you are huddled in a fallout bunker, rationing water, but absolutely thriving on a hot Gouda dip. It is the most optimistic survival gear ever created. It currently sits in the pantry next to the canned peas, waiting for the apocalypse to get a little more gourmet. Priorities, right? 14. Someone actually bought a professional-grade fog machine for home security ambiance. The theory was sound in a Batman sort of way. If intruders break in, you fill the house with dramatic mist to disorient them. In practice, you tested it once on a Tuesday night. It didn't stop a burglar, but it did trigger every smoke detector in the tri-state area and gave the dog PTSD. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face and ended up stubbing your toe on the coffee table while the alarm shrieked. The only thing it successfully scared away was your dignity and a potential date who thought your house was on fire. 15. You stocked up on massive plastic-wrapped DVD box sets of critically acclaimed dramas you have never seen, strictly just in case the internet dies forever. You told yourself that when the Wi-Fi goes down, you will finally watch all 6 seasons of that mob show everyone talks about. But let's be honest, if the internet dies, you are going to nap or panic, not analyze complex character arcs. Those box sets are now just cultural landmines sitting on your shelf, unopened bricks of guilt silently judging you for binge-watching cat videos instead of engaging with high art. They will remain wrapped until the heat death of the universe. 16. A Bluetooth-enabled toothbrush that sings motivational quotes to you. This was purchased to optimize your morning routine and build better habits for the end times. Because nothing gets plaque off like a robot voice telling you to seize the moment while you drool toothpaste. But technology is fickle. After 2 weeks, the moisture got into the circuits and the thing started glitching. It woke you up at 3 a.m. screaming, "Crush the day!" from the bathroom vanity like a possessed motivational speaker. It has been retired to the drawer of shame. The plaque won this round, and you went back to a manual brush that doesn't yell at you. 17. A grappling hook. Yes, a real, heavy-duty metal grappling hook. You didn't buy this for scaling walls or escaping a burning building. You bought it to retrieve the bag of chips from the other end of the couch without standing up. It was the peak of lazy innovation. The first attempt involved a clumsy throw, a shattered bowl of popcorn, and a scratch across the flat-screen TV that you still haven't explained to your spouse. Apparently, tactical espionage gear requires a bit more skill than you possess. It's now hidden in the closet, a heavy metal reminder that you are not, and never will be, an action hero. 18. The pocket-sized, hand-cranked nuclear radiation detector. This is for the person who sees a mushroom cloud on the horizon and thinks, "Hold on, let me just crank this little gadget for 2 minutes to confirm what my melting skin is already telling me." The logic is baffling. If you are close enough to need this, you probably have bigger problems than getting an accurate Geiger reading. It sits in your emergency bag, a plastic placebo for nuclear anxiety. You crank it occasionally just to hear the beep, comforting yourself with the knowledge that you can scientifically measure your own doom before the shockwave hits. 19. That novelty helmet with the dual drink holders and the long, winding straws. You justified this purchase as essential hands-free hydration equipment for a survival scenario. You know, in case you need to wield a machete while sipping filtered water. In reality, it was used once during a Super Bowl party 5 years ago. The straws are now impossible to clean and probably contain a new strain of bacteria. It sits in the storage closet, gathering dust and making your emergency supplies look like they were curated by a frat boy who refuses to grow up. 20. You bought a life-sized inflatable moose decoy. Let that sink in for a second. You live in a subdivision where the wildest wildlife is a squirrel with a limp. What was the master plan here? Were you going to lure a bull moose into your cul-de-sac for a duel? Or was this a survival strategy to confuse invading paratroopers with a blow-up animal? It sat in the box for 6 years until you finally inflated it for a prank, terrified your own children, and realized you had absolutely nowhere to store a 6-foot plastic woodland creature. It is now deflated in the attic, coated in dust, waiting for a moose invasion that is statistically unlikely to ever happen. 21. The home lie detector kit. You watched too much daytime TV drama and decided you needed scientific interrogations at the dinner table. It came with cheap plastic finger sensors and a needle that jumped around randomly based on humidity rather than truth. You strapped your spouse in to ask who ate the last donut, and the machine claimed they were a sleeper agent for a foreign government. Then, you hooked up the dog, and it accused him of tax fraud. Instead of revealing deep family secrets, it just annoyed everyone and ruined 3 consecutive Thanksgivings. It is now buried in the junk drawer, labeled "Do Not Touch," to prevent further litigation. 22. A designer Kevlar vest for the family dog. Because apparently your golden retriever, whose biggest threat is the vacuum cleaner, needs ballistic protection during his morning pee. You spent $300 preparing Fido for a cartel shootout that is never going to happen in your gated community. The poor dog walks like a stiff robot whenever you put it on, looking at you with eyes that scream, "Why are you like this?" It protects against absolutely nothing except his dignity. Now it sits in the closet, a heavy, tactical reminder that you love your pet a little too much and trust your mailman a little too little. 23. The handcrafted wicker picnic basket with real ceramic plates and silverware strapped inside. You bought this with a vision of a romantic, civilized lunch in a sun-dappled meadow. In reality, the thing weighs 40 pounds when empty. Carrying it from the car to the park bench feels like a CrossFit workout. Once you open it, you realize you have to wash dishes in a public restroom or carry dirty china back home covered in mustard. You used it exactly once, fought a colony of ants for a ham sandwich, and immediately went back to using plastic bags and paper plates like a sane person. 24. The aerodynamic roof cargo carrier for your SUV. You bought this sleek plastic shell envisioning cross-country road trips, hauling kayaks, skis, and camping gear like you were starring in an adventure commercial. In reality, it has been empty since the day you installed it. It whistles aggressively on the highway, destroys your gas mileage, and makes your car slightly too tall for the downtown parking garage. It's just an empty plastic coffin enjoying the view, advertising to the world that you could go on an expedition, but you're actually just going to Costco. 25. A pocket-sized fold-out barbecue grill. You bought this for those spontaneous wilderness cookouts you hallucinated you would be having. You thought you'd be flipping burgers by moonlight on a whim. The reality is that this thing is made of tinfoil and despair. It's so small you can cook exactly one slider at a time, provided you have 3 hours to wait. The first time you used it, it wobbled, collapsed, and dumped your hot dog into the dirt. Now it's rusted shut in your trunk, waiting to give someone tetanus if they ever try to force it open again. 26. A high-tech camera installed inside your refrigerator so you can check your inventory from your phone. You convinced yourself this would revolutionize grocery shopping. "I'll never forget milk again," you cheered. But let's be real. Checking a live feed of your condiments is the most boring reality show in history. You found yourself staring at a jar of pickles during a meeting, just to feel something. You even named the wilting head of lettuce Larry, before watching him slowly decompose in 4K resolution. The camera eventually fogged up or lost Wi-Fi connection, and honestly, looking with your actual eyes is just faster. 27. You bought a professional Morse code key because you read one survival blog that said, "When the internet dies, the dots and dashes will rule the earth." There is just one tiny flaw in this master plan. You don't know Morse code. Neither does your wife, your kids, or anyone else in your contact list. You spent an afternoon tapping out random rhythms that probably translate to "I am a potato" in naval speak. Now it sits on your desk as a fidget toy. You nervously tap it during Zoom calls, unknowingly signaling an SOS to absolutely nobody. 28. You bought a mid-range metal detector with ambitious visions of unearthing pirate gold, Civil War relics, or at least a lost Rolex on the local beach. You spent 3 entire weekends walking in slow, hypnotic circles, headphones on, listening to high-pitched beeping static. Your total haul? 6 rusty bottle caps, a crushed soda can from 1998, and 72 cents in sticky pennies. You realize that treasure hunting is mostly just janitorial work with more electronics. Now the device leans in the corner of the garage, gathering dust and waiting for you to drop your keys in the grass so it can finally be useful again. 29. A box labeled Instant Fireplace Ambiance, which turned out to be nothing more than a DVD of a crackling log fire with an optional smooth jazz soundtrack. You bought this for emergency morale, thinking that if you were trapped in a blizzard, seeing a fire on TV would warm your spirit. But staring at a looped video of burning wood while you freeze in a power outage is a special kind of psychological torture. It offers zero heat and maximum irony. Now it sits on the shelf, a digital lie that mocks you with its pixelated warmth while you wear 3 sweaters. 30. The impulse-bought luxury emergency sob room tent. It was marketed as a wellness cocoon for your midlife crisis meltdowns. You set it up in the corner of the bedroom, threw in a beanbag, and stared at the printed affirmations on the wall that said things like, "You're not failing, you're just pre-successing." It felt less like a sanctuary and more like a timeout corner for adults. After 2 sessions of sitting in the dark trying to meditate, you realized it was taking up half the room. The cat claimed it, and now it's a spider hotel where insects go to find their own inner peace. 31. A massive stash of vintage road maps covering every state from Maine to Utah. You gathered these because you are convinced that one day, a solar flare or a vengeful pigeon is going to take out the GPS satellites. You are ready to navigate the old-fashioned way. Except you haven't left your county since 2012, and you lack the geometric comprehension required to refold a map once it's opened. It ends up looking like a crumpled paper ball in the glove box. You are prepared to navigate a cross-country road trip that you will absolutely never take, using data from 1998. 32. A biometric lunchbox. You spent real money on a container that requires your fingerprint to access a ham and cheese sandwich. Who were you trying to protect your snacks from? The Ocean's 11 crew? The lunchroom bandit? It worked great until the day the battery died, or your finger was slightly greasy. The box locked shut with a tuna salad inside and refused to open. It sat on your desk for 3 days, slowly becoming a biological weapon. HR eventually had to intervene because of the smell. You learned the hard way that some security measures are best left analog. 33. Those novelty golf club head covers shaped like plush squirrels, dragons, or a banana wearing sunglasses. You bought them to show the world you have a personality and a fun side on the fairway. The reality is that you are a grown adult wrestling with a stuffed animal every time you need your driver. It looks ridiculous, and the squirrel stares at you with judgmental plastic eyes every time you slice the ball into the woods. You aren't Tiger Woods, you're just a guy with a petting zoo in his golf bag. The clubs still don't work, but at least they look cozy. 34. A set of perfectly balanced throwing knives. You didn't buy these for self-defense. You bought them because you watched an action movie and thought, "I could totally be that guy." You envisioned yourself pinning a target to a tree from 50 feet away with effortless cool. In practice, you nearly took your best friend's ear off and put a hole in the backyard fence that you had to cover with a planter. You realized you have the aim of a stormtrooper and the coordination of a drunk toddler. They were immediately retired to the back of the closet for the safety of the entire neighborhood. 35. You bought a mood ring because, for a brief moment, you believed a piece of cheap jewelry could understand your psyche better than you do. It was supposed to reflect your emotional state with shifting colors: blue for calm, red for angry, purple for passionate. Instead, it mostly hovered between a murky, confused swamp green and a dull, existential fog gray. You spent weeks analyzing the color chart like a horoscope, trying to figure out why your ring said "romantic" while you were doing your taxes. It turns out, it wasn't reading your soul. It was just measuring your poor circulation. Now it sits in a jewelry box, a thermal lie that permanently judges your cold hands. 36. The strap-on posture corrector harness. You bought this because you felt yourself slowly curling into a shrimp shape in front of the computer and decided to fix your spine instantly. It looked like a simple medical aid online. In practice, wearing it feels like being in a torture device designed by the Spanish Inquisition. It cuts off circulation to your armpits, chafes your skin, and forces you to walk like a stiff, indignant robot. You wore it for exactly 20 minutes before deciding that slouching was a fair price to pay for being able to breathe. Now it lives in the drawer, a tangle of straps and shame. 37. The foldable treadmill desk combo. You bought this with the noble intention of optimizing your workflow. You were going to walk 10 miles a day while typing emails, becoming a beacon of health and productivity. In reality, typing while walking makes you look like a drunk giraffe trying to play the piano. You used it for 3 days, got motion sickness during a spreadsheet review, and never turned it on again. Now, it serves its true purpose, the world's most expensive laundry rack. It currently holds 3 damp towels and a pile of shirts, silently flashing Error 9 whenever you bump into it. 38. The portable infrared sauna blanket. It looked like a luxurious, high-tech way to detox and lose weight while lying on your own couch. In practice, you are essentially zipping yourself into a giant, electric burrito wrapper. You spent 40 minutes sweating profusely while trapped in heavy PVC, unable to reach the TV remote, answer your phone, or scratch your nose. You emerged looking like a boiled lobster and smelling like hot plastic. It felt less like a spa day and more like a hostage situation. It is now folded under the bed, used only to confuse the cat, who thinks it's a giant crinkly toy. 39. A high-powered, silent dog whistle. You bought this imagining yourself as the beastmaster of the suburbs. You thought one blow would summon every canine in a 5-mile radius to your side, or at least stop the neighbor's terrier from barking at 2 a.m. The reality? You stood on your porch, red-faced, blowing into a metal tube that makes no sound, looking like a mime having an asthma attack. The dogs didn't care. In fact, the only thing you successfully summoned was a headache and a confused look from your spouse, who wondered why you were aggressively whistling at the air. 40. The heated butter knife. You bought this because you identified cold butter tearing the toast as the single greatest struggle in your life. It promised a smooth, hot slice through dairy every time. But here's the catch. It takes 20 minutes to charge for about 15 seconds of lukewarm heat. By the time the knife is ready, your toast is stone cold and you are already eating dry bread out of frustration. It is a marvel of engineering that solves a problem a regular knife and 5 seconds of patience could fix for free. Now it just sits in the drawer, uncharged, a monument to lazy innovation. 41. That intricate travel pillow that makes you look like a time traveler who forgot how human necks work. You know the one. It wraps around your chin, head, and possibly your soul. You bought it for that red-eye flight, convinced it was the secret to airborne bliss. Instead, you spent 4 hours trapped in a sweaty foam vise, while the people in row 22B stared at you with a mix of pity and fear. You didn't sleep. You just secured your place in the awkward aisle hall of fame. It now lives in the closet, too expensive to throw away, but too embarrassing to ever wear in public again. 42. A keychain breathalyzer. You bought it under the guise of responsibility, telling yourself you would use it to make safe choices. In reality, it became a high-score arcade game at parties. You and your friends spent the night blowing into a cheap piece of plastic to see who could hit the highest number, which is the exact opposite of its intended purpose. It's also wildly inaccurate. It once told you that you were sober enough to drive after 3 margaritas, while simultaneously telling your teetotaler aunt she was legally intoxicated. It's not safety equipment, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. 43. A portable, miniature rock-climbing wall for your fingers. Yes, this exists. You bought it to train your grip strength, fantasizing about a scenario where you are dangling from a cliff and your life depends entirely on your index finger's ability to hold a crimp. In reality, it's a desk toy for people who are bored out of their minds. You used it twice, realized that finger pull-ups look ridiculous, and now it just sits there. Visitors assume it's a piece of abstract art or a weird coaster, never guessing it represents your failed career as a professional hand model. 44. The doomsday-ready freeze-dried lasagna bucket. Touted as gourmet bunker fare that lasts for 25 years. You cracked one open out of curiosity, thinking, hey, maybe I'll just have a nice Italian dinner tonight. Big mistake. It tasted like regret wrapped in wet cardboard and seasoned with sadness. The texture was somewhere between sawdust and old tires. Now the remaining packets sit in your pantry like tiny bricks of culinary betrayal. You are keeping them for the apocalypse, but honestly, if the world ends and this is the menu, you might just prefer to starve. 45. A stack of books on quantum spoon, bending and telepathic plant communication. You went through a phase where you thought you were on the verge of a psychic awakening. You spent hours staring at a teaspoon, straining your brain until you got a headache, but the spoon remained stubbornly straight. Then you tried whispering to your ficus to bond with it on a cellular level. The plant didn't grow faster, it just dropped a leaf in silent judgment. You eventually realized that your cutlery is safe and your houseplants just want water, not conversation. The books are now used to prop up a wobbly table leg. 46. The Parallel Universe Emergency Pack. It included a compass that spins wildly, fake alien currency, and a phrasebook for a language called Galactic Gleepglorp. You bought this with a chuckle, but a tiny part of you thought, well, if I do slip into another dimension while changing the TV channel, I'll be the only one ready to barter. It's the ultimate just-in-case purchase for the sci-fi paranoid. It's currently gathering dust, but you refuse to throw it away. Laugh all you want, but when you accidentally warp to planet Zorg and need to order a coffee, you'll be the one laughing. 47. That intense anti-snoring headgear that looks like medieval torture equipment. It straps around your chin and head, making you resemble a low-budget wrestler or Hannibal Lecter having a bad night. You bought it in desperation to save your marriage or your own sleep. You wore it exactly once. It didn't stop the snoring. It just amplified the sound by turning your head into an echo chamber while pinching your ears. You woke up with a headache and a dignity deficiency. Now it's buried in the back of the drawer, the badge of shame for anyone who dares to sleep over. 48. A life-size cardboard cutout of a celebrity or a tough-looking security guard. You told yourself it was a brilliant Home Alone-style burglar deterrent to place in the front window when you went on vacation. In reality, it is a heart attack waiting to happen inside your own home. You forgot it was there, walked into the living room at 2 a.m. for a glass of water, and absolutely screamed because you thought the rock was standing in the dark watching you. It now faces the wall in the guest closet, permanently grounded for terrifying the homeowner one too many times. 49. A full set of emergency diplomacy puppets. These were handmade sock characters meant to defuse family arguments through interpretive roleplay. You actually thought, next time we fight about politics at Thanksgiving, I'll just bring out neutral Nancy the puppet to mediate. You haven't known true chaos until you've seen a grown adult scream at a googly-eyed sock. The ceasefire lasted 3 seconds before Aunt Linda insulted the puppet's tone of voice. The puppets were retired immediately. It turns out sticking your hand inside a sock doesn't solve deep-seated family resentment. It just makes it weirder. Admit it. One of these sounded uncomfortably familiar. So here is the challenge. Confess your most useless, just-in-case purchase in the comments, no explanations. Let strangers judge you. If this episode hurt your ego but made you laugh, hit like. If it hurt a lot, subscribe. We do this regularly.